back to tonight's edition of I-24 News. We are at the daily debate. Of course, some 60 people are reported dead and around 100 wounded in yesterday's attack by Al-Shabaab militants on a shopping mall in Nairobi, Kenya. And the militants have not stopped there as they continue to hold hostages in the center. And joining me tonight in the studio is expert on Arab political discourse and director of Center for the Study of Middle East and Islam at Bar-Ilan University, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Thank you very much for coming. As well as retired Lieutenant General, the first international vice president of the International Correction and Prison Association and owner of the managing director of Adato Consulting, Mrs. Orit Adato. I think we gave it.
Yeah,
it was a big introduction.
Too long.
Yes. So first of all, welcome you both here in the studio. Let's just start. Who is the Al-Shabaab militant group?
Well, Al-Shabaab, they are actually Somalis from the Sahel, from this part of Somalia, who are, let's say, Islamists, fighters, more or less Al-Qaeda-like organization, yet based on the tribes of Somalia. So it's a combination of tribalism and Islamism combined, and actually inspired by the Saudis, and actually financed by the Saudis for a while. Right now they don't, because the Americans already prevented it. But for years they were financed by the Saudis, just like Al-Qaeda of the North Africa, which are also some part of Islamic groups which were radicalized by Saudis through the years, because already 30 or even more years, the Saudis are pumping money to Islamic communities in Africa, in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Niger, Chad, Mali, down south to Mozambique, all the way south to South Africa as well, in order to get them, those Africans, more Islamist, and in the Wahhabi style of the Saudis. They are sending teachers, they're sending preachers, books, scholarships. They are inviting people from Africa to Saudi Arabia to study the Wahhabi version of Islam, and when they go back, they are full of this ultra-Orthodox Islam in the Wahhabi way, which is only one step before being Al-Qaeda.
So,
and we know the Boko Haram in Nigeria, which are similar, and you know, at the same day that attack has been in Nairobi, there were 140 people killed in Nigeria, in North Nigeria, and no one is speaking about it because it's happening them frequently.
Every day almost.
Yeah. Mrs. Adato, can we or should we try to compare between Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab?
I think, as has been said before, these organizations are based on the same ideology, which is radicalization and extremism. I don't think there is really a difference on the subcultures between the organization. They all have the same vision. And the Boko Haram from Nigeria says it's loud and clear. We want the world to become a huge caliphate, a Muslim caliphate with the Sharia as the rule. So that's the way. The differences are minor when you are talking about such big organizations.
The main point here is that they don't view the states as legitimate states, because they view all these states, which are in Africa and Middle East as well, as some things which were created by the colonialism, by the Christians, by the infidels, in order to divide the Islamic world and to shatter it to pieces. Now they have to abolish all the borders, creating one caliphate, as Orit said, and to establish the Islam as the law of the whole country, to replace the states and the states' law, which there is in in one of those states.
When they have been asked in Nigeria, for example, are you going to maintain the killing for that? They said, yes, of course, until it will change, until it will be a country of the Islam.
And this was actually based on the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who said that I was ordered to kill and to fight the Jews and the other infidels, and to kill them until they declare that there is only one Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger.
these groups are basically a huge burden on, let's try to phrase it, liberate Islam or liberal Islam, who are trying to create maybe a better image for Islam for the last few years.
Do you really think so? You can see what's happening in the countries that the Islam is ruling, or the radical Islam is ruling. Speaking about rights, human rights, about freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of... I don't see it in these areas. And what I think is it is much more crucial than we are talking now here on Africa. Because, you know, nowadays in Syria there are hundreds, even if not more than that, European Muslims and converted that are really being experienced in fighting and combating in Syria. At the end of the day, they will get back to Europe. And do you think they will go fishing or do something like this? No. They will look for the next phase of globalization of the Islamic Caliphate.
So how do you fight it?
Well, first of all, I think that the lack, of course, in Africa, it's two bases, as to my opinion, from the operational point of view. One is intelligence, and I'm speaking about a professional, systematic intelligence that shows you tension indicators and trends and what is really the situation. And the other arm is special forces, how to deal with it, how to conquer it. That's from the operational point of view. You know, here it's about 36 hours since it began, and it's still going on in Nairobi.
Crisis,
so if they had some special forces with the abilities, they would have overcome the crisis. But I was speaking just from operational point of view. There is a lot of a need to give the moderate Muslim leadership to come forward and say, this is not really Islam.
So yet we see intelligence, U.S. intelligence in Yemen, but it's not actually solving the problem like we saw a month ago.
First of all, the Western intelligence organizations are more or less handcuffed because they have to adhere to all kinds of human rights or laws and all these things. The usage of drones today is very highly criticized, especially in America. But the tragic is that what we see today, the upheaval of Islam, fueled by the Saudis, is actually comes from petrodollars, which are paid by the West. Means the American dollars and the European euros are actually fueling the Saudi assault against the West.
Just like in Afghanistan in 1979.
Exactly, exactly. And this is the tragedy, because the addiction of the Western countries to the oil, which comes from the Gulf, actually makes the Gulf, or enables the Gulf, to export its terror to the West by through Africa, through Asia, which will come finally to Europe and to America.
Is coming already.
Sure.
So you are talking about an ongoing situation, of course the situation is ongoing in Kenya, but it's an ongoing situation that we cannot see actually
no, there is a wake-up call.
To resolve
there
it.
is a need for a wake-up call to the Western world to realize that its values and its nature does not fit with these, with the base, the ideological base of these terror and terrorism and radicalism. So there is a need to change a little bit the nature of how you act toward it, and how you. That's why when I spoke a little bit about the moderate leadership, there is a need to encourage them to come forward, because if it won't come from their leadership, moderate, if we can find those courageous that will step forward and say a few words about it, then it won't work. There is a need for religious, educational, and of course operational.
How come we don't hear these voices that Mrs. Adato is saying, the more courageous, liberal leadership in Islam?
Look, unfortunately, the reformer of Islam, like Martin Luther in Christianity, was not born yet. Islam today is governed by the radicals. Those moderate, if there are some out there, They are intimidated.
Yeah.
They are afraid to open their mouths because they will be targeted before anybody else. And this is why they cannot, even if we push them very firmly to the center, they will run away because they will be exposed and targeted by those Islamists, by those radicals. And we have to take in account that the mere immigration to the West is actually the problem, because what enables them to change even the thinking in the West is the fact that people in the constituency are Muslims. I'll give you a good example. Today, neither in America nor in Europe, in many places, you cannot talk about Islamic terror because it's not politically correct. Because you might upset some of your constituency. So you don't talk about this. So when you don't talk about this, it doesn't exist. Means that people today are actually paralyzed when they have to talk, must talk about the Islamic radicalism which immigrates to Europe and changed Europe tremendously, to a degree that European countries became the exporters of jihadists to places like Syria, Iraq, and in Africa as well.
Well, I would say that if the West will give some support to these leaders, moderate leaders, there are not so many because they are afraid, of course, but if they will be given some support, and there will be one more, when there will be a critical mass of them speaking in a different way, maybe there will be born the new leader that you are waiting for. But I do believe that there is a possibility, because otherwise we see only darkness, and we don't want to look at that.
So what are the new, let's turn it back to Israel, what are the new terror attacks or terrorist groups that Israel, as we know Hamas and we know Hezbollah, but we are seeing another border in the Sinai Peninsula, and what is happening in Sinai?
What happens in Sinai is because of the lawlessness in Sinai, which is for many years, the Egyptians didn't look at Sinai as a part of Egypt. They neglected the whole thing and actually enabled this jihadi land to grow up in Sinai. And today there are some dozens of organizations inside Sinai who are all united today in fighting against the Egyptian army, only because they ousted Morsi. And this fight might very well spill into Egypt. Rather than spill to us, because we don't let them, especially defense, and we are fighting them. But if they try to come into Israel, but the Egyptians are much more exposed, and they are much more vulnerable because they are all over the place, and those jihadists actually attack police stations, buses, even armored vehicles. And they have no fear from the Egyptians. The Egyptians have a very, very big problem inside Sinai, and you cannot use tanks against them because they hide in the mountains. You need commando units, you need helicopters, and this is very hard.
Special units.
Very hard. You need commando units, and it is very, very hard to locate them, very, very hard to target them, and very, very hard to actually chase them out from Sinai because they are deeply engraved into this terrain of Sinai.
In one sentence?
Again, Egypt is part of Africa in a way, because what happens in northeast Nigeria is very similar to what...
Yes, but the population in Sinai are more Saudis.
Yeah.
And they are thinking in Saudi way, and this is why when Egyptians, who are different dialect and different kind of Arabs, have to fight Saudis, something good cannot come out.
And looking at Syria, it's not a better place for us. So looking all around, it's the same phenomena, just in different little differences.
So Mrs. Orit Adato, thank you very much for this discussion. And Mr. Mordechai Kedar, thank you. Thank you both for coming here to the studio. And we're going out for a small break, 10 minutes break, for an update from our news desk. And then we're back to the I-24 News one-on-one. Don't go anywhere.